It's been a year since my last shopping spree. Last time when I showed you the fabrics that I bought, I apparently stirred up some controversy. Let's get started. In this video, I'll show you part of my collection, and stay tuned till the end for a special announcement. And the video is called How to Use African Fabrics for Quilting. I'll go ahead and post a link to the video here, and I'll also put it in the description box below. And I got some wonderful comments from them, but then there was some controversy that was sparked. So here we go. I'm not going to read every comment to you. Let's get straight to the controversy. And so here we came up with our first controversy. I can't imagine cutting up these gorgeous fabrics. I don't think that was meant as a criticism, but it is a fair point. So all of these fabrics are beautiful in their own right and designed by the fabric designer to be as pretty as I can make it. It would be very easy to use the fabrics the way they are in big pieces like curtains or tablecloths or bedspreads. You may have to sew some together in order to do that, but mostly it'd be to make something bigger and not to transform the way it looks. So it is a fair point. This is a thing that quilters like to do. Just like an artist uses a palette of paint, we quilters also like to do the same thing, is to cut up the pieces, take really beautiful fabric and cut them in such a way that it will transform it into something else, are also artistic, in the hopes that the whole is better than the sum of the pieces, just to transform it, to show our personality, to add our own special creative touch to it. And it was nicely said. Oh, these are such beautiful and different patterns you have found. So many beautiful cultures and styles from Africa. Just gorgeous. And I'm looking forward to seeing your work of art after you apply your genius to it. This one, keep that in mind. Keep this comment in mind, because this part here, so many beautiful cultures and styles from Africa, as we get to the controversy part. Julie Miller says, I first fell in love with Hawaiian fabric with the romantic feel I received from watching my grandparents dance arm in arm wearing the first muumuus they brought home from Hawaii. My muumuu matched. I was 3. Many years later now, but these wax block prints from Africa give me a similar feel of love and dance and the different culture and lifestyles they represent. I'll have to say that yardage will cover the reverse side of the piece. I will have to say that yardage to cover the reverse side of the piece quilt is so worth it to me, as so many of these prints are such wonderful showcase all by themselves for an immediate different look in a room. So glad to have found you on day 4 of this video. I am already looking forward to seeing more of your quilts and maybe a matching dressing gown with these colorful fabrics. Aloha. It's a beautiful memory, isn't it? And I agree with Julie that some of these fabrics are really too pretty to cut up, and that all of them actually would work really well for a back of a quilt. Or just beautiful just by themselves the way they are without any cutting whatsoever. Thank you for sharing the shop's name, Love Your Fabrics. I'll put a link in the description box for the shop that I purchased these fabrics from, as well as other shops that I've used to buy these kinds of fabrics. Bridget Hillen. Hi, Shelina. I'm so glad I found you. Brenda of Conquering Mount Scrapmore sent me. I work a lot with African fabrics. I'm lucky. My roots are also in East Africa, and my friend is a tailor who regularly bequeaths me her scraps, which would normally be thrown out. I'll subscribe to your channel and look forward to following you. That's a really sweet comment. Freedom Walker Peace said, thank you so much for sharing the fabric source. I signed up for the newsletter. I moved to the city to a rural area and have been wanted to get African print material. Notes from Lisa Land. African fabrics make the most beautiful quilt backs. That is so true. Here's another controversy. Anthony Jones said, these are not African fabrics. They are Dutch and for the most part made in Holland still. Although the Dutch have set up a few factories in Africa to exploit the cheap labor, yes, they are widely worn across Africa as one of the last vestiges of rampant Dutch colonialism. I have no problem using these fabrics and often do so myself, but please don't further the myth that they are African. Okay, so this statement has a lot to unpack here, so let's just start with this. Let's talk about the history of the African fabric. This wax block printing technique was developed in Indonesia. This is where they make the batik quilts, and so you may be familiar with the process. Basically, you just take a wax block. You would just take some fabric like this and put and stamp it with wax using a block like this. So this is a different design that I have here. This is specifically made for wax. This is specifically made for wax block prints. There it is. It says hand carved wood stamp used for making batik prints. The stamp is dipped in wax and applied to cloth. Then cloth is dyed. Wax is removed and reverse print remains. So in this case, the wax would be on this white sections here, and then when you dip this into black dye, then the white would still be white, and then everything else that was not protected by the wax would turn the color. And you can go over this process more than once to make prints with multiple colors. This technique has come over to Africa by way of the Dutch, so it has this ugly stain of colonialism to it. So that's already a little bit controversial. So it's also called Dutch wax prints. The Dutch used African motifs and African designs and symbols to make this fabric, much like the English used Indian designs and tried to sell them to people of the Netherlands, but the people in the Netherlands were not interested in this fabric. But they found that the people in Africa were very interested, so they continued to sell the fabric in Africa. Okay, so let's talk about the name of the fabric. This fabric is also known as Ankara fabric in West Africa, in parts of West Africa. And let me explain to you why I'm calling it African fabric instead of Ankara fabric on the title of this video. First of all, when I buy this fabric, every place I've ever bought it, which is like 3 or 4 by now, they use the term African fabric. They don't use the term Ankara. Ankara is the correct term for it. It's a specific term for it. If you call it African fabric, it's a little bit misleading because there are other types of fabric that are not Ankara fabric. It's like a big umbrella term, African fabric, instead of the term that represents a specific fabric that's here. So the number one reason is that that's where all the websites call it, where I buy them. The second reason I call it that is that not everybody knows what the term Ankara means, and they wouldn't know necessarily what I'm talking about. I mean, it'd be nice for people to learn it, and I will definitely tell you this is Ankara fabric. But if you don't know what it is, then it makes more sense to me to put African fabric in the title, and then in the video itself to say, hey, you can call this Ankara fabric. So the third reason that I am kind of hesitant to call it Ankara fabric is that where I was born in Uganda, this fabric was not called Ankara, it was called Kitenge. The name for this fabric in one particular language in Africa, and Africa is a continent, there's lots of different countries in Africa, and even within the country there's lots of different groups of people, and so they would have different languages and different words that they would use to represent this fabric. And I know that the people in the United States who have a particular name for it usually call it Ankara, but it is because it's from West Africa, and most of the people from the United States are more familiar with West Africa than they are with East Africa, and Uganda is in East Africa. So it makes sense for them to call it Ankara, but for me, I know it as Kitenge, and yes, I could change my vocabulary and call it Ankara. I'm kind of hesitant to change the language to the dominant language because you need to use the terms of the language of the people that you're speaking with, right? So if I'm speaking to you, then I want to use the language that you know, what you're going to call it and how you're going to understand it. And African fabric, to me, calling it African fabric will help a majority of people, a bigger group of people, at least understand and get the general gist of what I'm talking about. And then by showing you the fabric and by telling you this Ankara or Kitenge, then you can choose what term you want to use for yourself. And the reason that I don't want to call it Dutch fabric is because the Dutch colonialists own factories both in the Netherlands as well as in Africa to make more of this fabric. So I guess it's possible that we should be calling them Dutch wax prints, which is another name for these. But personally, these are African designs with African symbolism, and I think because of the price of this fabric, I'm going to venture to guess that these are made in Africa. And I want to give credit to the people who are working there and to the African designs and symbolisms that are on each of these fabrics. But I just want to give the Africans credit for what they actually contributed to this. I don't know who actually owns them now. I would hope that they're Africans who also own these kinds of factories, but I don't know that for a fact. I'm hoping that by buying this fabric, I am supporting the people where the factories are, and I'm hoping that they are paid a fair wage. I don't know that either. The other issue, the other controversy about this is cultural appropriation. Some people may be worried about using this fabric because there may be some specific symbolism, or maybe you feel like you might be guilty of cultural appropriation if you use the fabrics. From everything that I've seen, there isn't that worry. You can use this fabric any way you want to, as long as you're doing it respectfully, obviously. And all the Africans that I've talked to are happy that I'm using their fabric because I'm supporting their economy and honoring their cultures. To me, it looks like they're not all the same group of people that design these fabrics. They are so different from each other that I'm sure that they come from a variety of cultures. And when I was making my Adinkra quilt, I was worried about that I was mixing and matching cultures and causing problems with that, because I don't know, which cultures get along with each other and which ones don't. But, the fabric gets along, and that to me is the most important thing, is that the fabric gets along together. Hopefully, eventually, if they don't get along now, they will sometime in the future, and we can just hope for a world peace in that way. At least they'll have world peace in my quilt. Let's read some more comments. They are known as African wax fabric or Ankara simply because they are popular in Africa. Yes, the Dutch introduced them. They learned the wax resist technique from Indonesia, but didn't like their style, but West Africa did. If they weren't popular, they wouldn't have sold. They're still popular now. Yes, they have businesses in Africa. There will be benefit to that area for work. Those businesses are ran by Africans, including the designers. My name is Shelina. This channel, Quilt and Color, is a variety show all about quilting. Please subscribe to this channel so you don't miss any of the videos. Tessa Bristow said Africa is not a country, it is a continent. Each country has its own traditional fabric and prints. I think they are Ankara prints, which are totally different from Shwe Shwe prints, which are South African. And then Barb says what she said. Lifina Day said, being open to compliments and critique is a way to learn and grow. Just as a quilt is judged at a show, you want to know how you can make it better to learn and grow in your art. So true. I appreciate all of your comments and your feedback. It's nice to know what you enjoy about the video so that I can take that feedback and incorporate those into my future videos. It's also nice to know when I did make a mistake, because I do want to correct it, and so I can use that feedback also in future videos. So please continue with that feedback. I really appreciate it. It is a sticky question. You've got colonialism, you've got cultural appropriation, you've got exploiting cheap labor, stealing designs from other cultures, all of that. But to me, by calling it African, it honors the people whose designs were used on these fabrics. The other reason why I'm having trouble calling it Ankara is also because I don't know what Ankara actually means. Does it represent just fabric that looks like this? As Sarah Priest said, there's lots of different cultures that are represented in this fabric. Some of these fabrics are so different from each other that they are probably from different peoples. And because of that, I don't know if the word Ankara actually fits every single piece of fabric that I bought here. And because I don't know, I would feel more comfortable using a more general global word like African than calling it Ankara and then missing out on a particular group of people who are then not represented with my limiting words, with my limited words that I'm using of Ankara. I don't know. And it's because of my ignorance. I don't know if I would be excluding people who contributed to the designs in the shopping spree that I had. And my guess is that based on the fact that there's not a lot of standardization amongst the fabric, my guess is that there's lots of different factories that are making them. So without having to research every single factory, I don't know. I would, again, using a more general term, African, just feels safer to me. Ankara fabric, also known as African wax print, is a cotton fabric, textiles that come from the various countries in the continent of Africa. They have vibrant colors, bold prints, with vibrant patterns that are created by using a wax resist block printing technique. It's popular for its durability and striking designs. African fabrics often carry cultural meanings, with specific patterns and colors representing a particular tribe, their stories, or their traditions. So what's your take on using this kind of fabric in quilts? What do you call this kind of fabric? Have you used this kind of fabric in your quilts? What do you think about any of this controversy? Do you think it's cultural appropriation? Let me know. I really would like to know. I did want to make an announcement to update you on what's coming up. In December, I hosted a 15 minutes to stitch challenge, and people really enjoyed that, and I enjoyed it, and a lot of people had asked for it to come back. We will resume that 15 minutes to stitch challenge. I will post daily videos and ask you to sew along with me and sew for 15 minutes, and I hope that you'll join me for that challenge. Make sure that you subscribe so you don't miss that. In case you missed that first video, I will go ahead and post a link to that video here and also in the description box below so that you don't miss it. Thank you for watching. I appreciate all of your support, and I'll see you in the next video.